Welcome into another exciting edition of Locked On 76ers. He's Keith Pompey. I'm Marc Farzetta. We're both wearing well-pressed collared shirts today. That's a plus. Also today, we're going to discuss how the 76ers are living in the old model when it comes to the new brand of basketball the NBA is offering. All that and more on this edition of Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we do thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code Locked On NBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Keith, I was thinking of you, man. When I read this story and listened to this interview before we did the show today, I went, man, this is old news. My man Keith Pompey been all over this from the jump. And as fate would have it, I tell you about this Rick Carlisle interview that I just watched there. Caitlin Cooper had it, and also shout out to Liberty Ballers who turned me on to the story. But you wrote the story back in, what was it, June, about how the NBA has changed and the Sixers are stuck in the old model. They have the big three, quote unquote, two aging stars in the league, injuries galore, unfortunately. And the NBA is saying, no. You don't need less. You need more. That's more talented players on the roster, not quote unquote top heavy, as Rick Carlisle has said.
Yeah, exactly right. And Rick is right. And the thing is, though, when we look at it, you know, in the past, everybody thought you needed super teams to win, right? It actually started, a lot of people think it started with LeBron going to Miami, like I'm taking my act to South Beach. But the most notable team before that was the Boston Celtics from 2007, 2012 with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce, right? But then you have the Golden State Warriors, all this and that. But what happened was that teams realized, especially in the era of this second apron, like if you go out there and you get X amount of max players, you really don't have the capability to go out and get other guys. And then with that, you're going to have a short shelf life with the guys that you have, just because you can't keep all of them. But what Oklahoma City did and what the Indiana Pacers did last year, they made it to like a team type of thing. They were deeper. They had guys who gelled together, and they just did it with a lot of different players, right? And that's how they were able to win. And now this is the trend. Teams are no longer going after big threes. Now what they're trying to do is they're trying to have interchangeable parts, a bunch of guards who can play together, and just go out there and play that way and win that way. And when you look at the 76ers, you know, we look at Paul George, we look at Joel Embiid, two guys who are injury prone. You look at Tyrese Maxey, another guy on a max salary contract. Well, that's the reason why in free agency, they had to go out and sign two-way players, sign players to two-way contracts, just because they can't afford to go out there and get a guy who they can add to a lucrative contract. So, yes, the NBA is changing, and these teams that had these big threes, unfortunately, that's only three guys. You need at least 12 guys or at least 10 quality guys to win a championship, and it's not working out that way anymore.
Yeah, like looking at the Indiana Pacers in the NBA Finals, I mean, you have 8 different players logging about 190 minutes in the finals, or excuse me, 140 or more minutes in the NBA Finals. That's a lot of minutes. That's depth right there. And to be more specific, when I was watching this interview, and again, shout out Liberty Ballers for finding this interview, Rick Carlisle is on with Caitlin Cooper, who covers Indiana basketball. And the question was, because I'm always interested in the question, because that provides the context of what the answer is. Now, if you're reading the headline, you might look at it and go, oh, Rick Carlisle rips the 76ers for their model. That's not what he's doing. But he is generally saying that the Sixers are stuck in a model. Any team that is looking for the big three is stuck in an old model. But he is not specific in naming the Sixers. But if you're a Sixers fan and you watch this, you go, huh, That doesn't sound like my team, unfortunately. And this is what he describes. The question is about the highest pickup rate, of course, defensively, was the Pacers. They were the highest pickup rate the NBA has had in 12 years was this year with a bunch of teams getting up there. But the best team at the highest pickup rate was the Indiana Pacers. And he talked about this style of basketball that, quote, plays a lot of guys and tries basically to get the opponent tired and then be able to attack in the fourth quarter. He said it's a tough style of play. It's a hard style of play, but, quote, this is a play hard league, and it's not just about top-heavy stars anymore. Now, I hear that, Keith. And again, the first thing I think about is the 76ers. The second thing I think about is your article from a couple of months ago about how this is exactly what the Sixers are doing, unfortunately. And not only are they stuck in this model, but they just recently doubled down on this model, if not tripled down, with first Paul George, first the extension with Joel Embiid, and then Paul George being signed in the offseason. Now, if there's a saving grace to this or a silver lining, you might look at this and say, well, the Sixers certainly don't have what the Pacers have. They don't have a deep team that they can rely on to make it to the NBA Finals, for instance. But what you can see is the Sixers building at least in this direction. VJ Edgecombe getting drafted, Jared McCain getting drafted last year, already having Tyrese Maxey, bringing a guy who's absolutely hungry in a Trendon Watford, for instance, having Quentin Grimes right now on the more likely than not, certainly, of being signed here with the 76ers, another hungry guy. Sixers might not have it right now, Keith, but would you agree they're at least trying to go after the new model of basketball?
I think I think they're in a tough spot. I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah, okay. What they're trying to do, they are trying to go after it, basically by saying we want Quentin Grimes, because what the new model is, if you look at both of those teams, we're talking about OKC and we're talking about Indiana. What did they have? They had like 4 guards who were all interchangeable, and then they had a couple wings that they added in there. So when you look at the Sixers, you talked about, Grimes, you talked about VJ Edgecombe, you talked about Jared McCain, you talked about Tyrese Maxey, but then you can add Kelly Oubre to the mix, maybe a little bit of a Justin Edwards, although he won't be handling the ball, but you can add him. You can also add Eric Gordon. He's a little bit older in the tooth, but at the same time, he is another guard. The problem is, though, when you look at the way these teams were constructed, they had 2 guys, and we're talking about last year. Indiana had 2 guys, their best 2 players were making $40 million. And then everybody else was making around $10 million. Well, with the Sixers, you got one guy making 55.2 in Joel Embiid coming up, and another guy in Paul George making 51.6. So then you add Tyrese Maxey's 37.9. Well, the second tier players are basically not as good as the second year players that these other guys have, because they just, you get what you afford. I mean, you get the caliber of player you can afford. The Sixers can't go out there and afford that. So they have to hope and pray that, this could happen. I mean, hope and pray that VJ Edgecombe can develop. But again, they are trying to get there, but until they get rid of the contracts of Paul George and Joel Embiid, they will not be able to get there. That's just going to be a roadblock that they're just going to have, unfortunately.
I 1,000% agree with that. And the real bad part of all this is what happens when you try to do 2 different things. It generally speaking doesn't work out. You got to commit one way or another. So I will at least say that, I think the flickering light at the end of the tunnel, not bright and shiny, but flickering, is, they have drafted young guards in the last 2 drafts, and they have Quentin Grimes, who looks like he will most likely be back with the Sixers in some capacity. And they obviously already have Tyrese Maxey, who is still very much in his prime and still is a guy that just works his ass off. You mentioned really taking on more of a leadership role with this team yesterday when you talk about getting in the gym with guys like Edgecombe, getting in the gym with guys like McCain as well. and making sure that they get that work in. That's something you want to see even more so from Tyrese Maxey. The other aspect of this that I do find interesting is you mentioned Kelly Oubre. We've talked about his role in this team a number of times, but is he one of those guys that could also be a player to kind of go through the transition from the old model to the new model, Keith?
I think he can, just because, when we look at Kelly Oubre, you look at him and, he's not a point guard, but he could play the 2, he could play the 3. He can also play small ball 4 for you. So, I think that a lot of times, we're going to talk about Jared McCain in the second segment. Yeah. But I also think that Kelly Oubre is a guy that gets overlooked a lot just because of, VJ Edgecombe is the new toy. Jared McCain is like the same thing, like a new toy as well. But Kelly has been here, so sometimes you get a little bit overlooked because you're already here. And it's just like, it's a great toy. It's just like when you get a new, Madden football, what you do, you take you love the old one, but next thing you know, you don't play it anymore. Like you just play the newer version, right? So I think that's what it is. But yeah, Kelly Oubre can be in the mix. And then you look at Eric Gordon. Again, I'm not saying he's a guy that you're going to depend on, but he's also a guy that that can come in and knock down shots. You know what I mean? So you have that luxury. But yeah, I do believe that Kelly Oubre is going to be in that mix, and he's going to be a more interchangeable part. It's funny, though, that we talk about this old model, right? The old model to the new model. Right. And just put this in perspective. So a couple years ago, it was always like in the regular season, you may play 12 guys. And then the first round of the playoffs is kind of sort of like, okay, I'm going to reduce my rotation to 9 guys, right? You may go 10, but it's going to be 9. And then all of a sudden, after that point, is all about playing maybe 7 guys, right? You just may play 7. Everyone plays. Well, Rick Carlisle was right. You just keep bringing these guys in, get them tired. A prime example was the Los Angeles Lakers last year in Game 4 against their playoff series against Minnesota. What did they do? They didn't make a single substitution in the second half, and they were gassed, right? And in the past, everyone was like, Joel Embiid's going to have to play 42 minutes. Such and such is going to have to play, 48 maybe, Maxey, this and that in the playoffs. Well, what happened is JJ Redick had to answer questions to why didn't you make any substitutions while Minnesota did. And that's something that years ago you thought like that's playoff basketball. Everybody goes Iron Man, the top teams. So this is just telling you how, Rick Carlisle and them are onto something, and this is a copycat league. And I'll give Daryl Morey some credit or some slack. I'm not gonna give him credit, but I'm gonna give him slack.
All right.
This is what I'm gonna give him slack is. So when they went out there and they drafted VJ Edgecombe, basically they were looking at it as if we made a mistake. We got to get somebody in here that's interchangeable. I don't think when they did the Jared McCain, they weren't thinking about this new model. It was just they had the 16th pick. This was a guy they felt like could be, someone who can come off the bench or maybe develop into a prospect. But right now, I think that he looked and realized that they made a mistake. He looked at what Indiana and OKC is doing, and he's like, you know what? Although people are saying I'm making a major mistake by going out there getting another guard when we need a power forward, I'm looking at these other teams that have interchangeable guards who all play well together. And what he did is he went out there and got a guy with not just a high basketball IQ, but a guy who was a great person. You know what I mean? A guy who likes working, a guy who would be a great teammate. That way you don't have to deal with the jealousy aspect of why I'm not getting as many minutes as I could somewhere else. So I have to give them credit for trying to make a bad situation a little bit better.
I agree. And Eric D is asking the question right now. Do you think VJ Edgecombe will get enough minutes to compete for Rookie of the Year? I'll say yes, because I think a lot of guys are going to get a lot of minutes this year. So I think, yeah, he'll have that opportunity.
But that's one thing that Nick Nurse. That's one thing that Nick Nurse is going to have to change, though. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, we're talking about this new playing style when you're doing stuff like that. Did you know, like, Tyrese Maxey was one of the league leaders in minutes, right? So apparently coaches who have a knack for playing guys extremely long minutes. Everybody talked about Tom Thibodeau with the New York Knicks and when he was with Chicago and when he was with Milwaukee. And they talk about the injuries that players had, like, Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, on and on. Well, the guy who played the players the second most amount of minutes, talking about his star players, was Nick Nurse. So to me, this upcoming year, I want to see it. Like, we have to see it, like, where you start getting a lot of these guys in, because when you look at it, Tyrese Maxey was fatigued. He was tired. And I wonder, and I'm not saying the coach got him hurt, but I'm wondering how much did him having to carry the load and do and log all these minutes attributed to his injuries at the latter part of the season.
Gotcha. All right. When we come back, I do want to focus on Jared McCain. Now, we talked about him at length yesterday, but there's one thing that I think we left out. I know I left out that I want to revisit. And also one more thing on Kelly Oubre. That's when we return. This is Locked On 76ers on the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Back after this. And let me tell you about Monarch Money. Most people can't name all the financial accounts or even what they're worth. That's kind of important. And whether it's 401ks, whether it's properties you have, whether it's investments you've made, you don't have the full picture? Well, get the full picture with Monarch Money. That's why Monarch Money is so fantastic. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, crisp, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your cell phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can also use the link to link all your accounts, and in just minutes, you can see clear data, visuals, and also get characterizations of your spending. And finally, feel the control over your finances with Monarch Money. I've linked the accounts before. It's easy. It's simple. Monarch Money takes the stress out of handling your finances. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Monarch Money also helps you save for that big purchase, that vacation, that car, college for the kids, whatever it might be. Monarch Money helps you with all your financial needs. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com. Put it in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with promo code LOCKEDONNBA. First, to put a bow on the Kelly Oubre thing, I think it's a great compliment for Kelly Oubre, actually, that he gets overlooked. And here's why. He is what even Tobias Harris should have been, in my opinion. Finding the perfect way to fit into every game, fit into every flow. He's like camouflage. You don't even know he's there, but when he's there, you're like, there he is. And I've said this before about him a lot. You might look at a box score at the end of the game, Keith, and you might see like 8 points or 12 points, or like, it's not that great a game for a guy, But it's like at that moment, he scored those 8 points where he had like a personal 8-0 run. It was when everyone else, maybe they got a little fatigued, they got a little tired, they couldn't find their rhythm. He finds those nice moments. And if he's not doing that, he's getting rebounds, he's getting steals, he's playing good defense. His adjustment, his ability to like be camouflage, be a chameleon, I'll say, I think is invaluable to the 76ers. I would love to see him stick around for at least a few more years here in Philadelphia. And the other thing is he doesn't cost all that much. That also helps put a big highlight on him being here in Philadelphia as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it would be. And he's a guy that, you look at him, he's the type of dude that, as you said, he just fits in. He doesn't have to do a lot. You don't have to run plays for him. But at the same time, he's a guy that's going to be able to go out there and just produce, and at the end, it's kind of like the real, as they say, the real ones know, right? And what I mean by that is, Tyrese Maxey, maybe Quentin Grimes, VJ Edgecombe are going to get all the accolades, and they're going to be the ones that after the game that the media is going to run to and say, hey, man, you scored X amount of points. But the real ones are going to know that defense that Oubre had, those rebounds that he grabbed, a couple of those deflections are going to be the thing that really helped the 76ers win these ball games. So, I really think that, he's going to be vital to the Sixers. And can I just say one thing, like just to go back to what we said last segment real quick?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm when we talk about minutes played, right? Now, last year, Josh Hart led the league in minutes played and the average for minutes played at 37.6 minutes per game. Devin Booker was number 2 at 37.3. Mikal Bridges was number 3 at 37.0. Now, Tyrese Maxey, since he didn't play in enough games, his stats did not count. So no one lists his minutes played, right?
Yeah.
But however, if Tyrese Maxey would have played, if his stats would have counted, he would have led the league in minutes played. He averaged 37.7 minutes played. The year before that, he was 37.5, right? So when you look at that, that's going to have to change. And then for him to be, to be rejuvenated for the playoffs. And then you look at a guy like Kelly Oubre, right? And we're talking about him. So, Kelly was he was second on the team at 34.6 minutes played. Wow. Quentin Grimes was 33.7. These two guys, well, at least Kelly Oubre would have been in the top 10, right? Quentin Grimes would have been in the top 20. I mean, that's a lot, dude. That's a lot for guys. So, I think that, but when we look at these teams that won the championship, right, you don't see any of their guys listed. None of them. Like I'm talking about, you don't see the Pacers. You don't see Oklahoma City. Like the Pacers, Indiana, Pascal Siakam was number 24. Wow. Number 24.
Wow.
And you don't see any of the Oklahoma City Thunder players listed at all and ahead of him. So, no, I take that back. You got one, Shea. Shea was
I was going to say, I would expect him to be up there a little bit. Yeah.
Shea was number 16, but then it goes to Pascal at 24. That's what you have to do.
How dare you play the MVP a lot of minutes? How dare you want him on the floor as much as possible? That's wild. So it does go to speak to really Nick Nurse and your point earlier in the show about, it ain't just the players that got to change. It's Nick Nurse that's got to change as well to make sure that those guys aren't logging those kinds of minutes. And I agree wholeheartedly. One of the guys that I would like to see the Sixers rely on a little bit more is Jared McCain. And obviously I want Jared McCain to be worthy of that reliance. And we talked about him a lot yesterday. So there's one point I just want to revisit here. And if the season works out like a lot of us expect, where you don't get a lot from Embiid, he's not healthy as you'd want him to be. You don't get a lot from Paul George, he's not healthy, not as healthy as you want him to be. How much more, how much better can Tyrese Maxey be? Like, obviously, make another All-Star team be nice, but we've seen him play at an All-Star level. We've seen him be a leading scorer. That's great. But how much really can you depend on him more, especially if we're asking now for him to play fewer minutes? So who's the guy that has the next highest ceiling? You could right away look at VJ Edgecombe and say, well, he's the rookie. He's the third overall pick. He's supposed to have the highest ceiling. But of the guys that you've already seen something from at the NBA level, is there a world, Keith, where, we look at Maxey and he's reliable for what he is in a world without Embiid or PG? Is there a world where Jared McCain becomes almost the most important Sixer when it comes to his development in his second year in the NBA? Could the Sixers find themselves in a spot where, even more than maybe Quentin Grimes and more than Tyrese Maxey, where they're relying on McCain to take the biggest step forward, being that he has got the highest ceiling of anyone we've already seen play at the NBA level?
Yeah, I mean that's a legitimate thing, and you can make a strong argument for that, because when you look at it, when we talk about right now when we talk about starters, and there are some people who say, well, I want Jared McCain in the starting lineup, but I don't think that he will be. I just don't, unless there's some injuries early on, in the other position. So when you look at it, you'll say, okay, we got Kelly Oubre, who is a guy who's going to be, no plays are drawn for him. He's going to be playing at the, on the block, so to speak. Then you have, we know what Paul George is going to do. Quentin Grimes is going to stretch the floor, so to speak. He's going to be a two-way player, and Maxi's going to be Maxi. But you're going to need a guy who's going to be able to come off the bench and do a lot of different things, and someone who can move without the ball, someone who's going to, stretch the floor, get defense, be like the Lou Will role. Like, as much as when we talk about the Clippers, right? We talk about all those other teams that Lou Williams went to. He was phenomenal in his role. And he was a guy who basically, he didn't get a lot of the glory. Now, he did get sixth man of the year and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, his offense is basically what helped that team become a winner when he was with the Clippers, So those are something that, that's something that's really, McCain can have the same type of impact. And I think for them to be good, it's going to have to be extremely impactful. Like if he takes a step back and he struggles this year, I think this season could be a struggle for them, because then what's that saying is you're going to have to depend more on Eric Gordon, right? You have to depend more on him. And I think that Eric Gordon can give you stuff possibly in a small sample size, but we're talking about over an 82-game season. Do you have faith to rely on somebody who's been in the league going into their 18th season, a guy that's a little older? So, yeah, he's going to have to have a major role talking about Jared McCain.
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree with that. When we come back, I'm not going to ask you the question. Someone else is going to ask you the question. And we also have two more things. One thing to get on Quentin Grimes. The other thing to get on a former 76er who is now going over to Europe, reportedly. We'll talk about that more when we return. This is Locked On 76ers on the Locked On Sixers YouTube channel. Back after this quick break. So I'm not asking the question. Anthony Washington is going to ask you the question this time. And I'll read it aloud to the classroom, Keith. Did Quentin Grimes sign yet?
Me no habla inglés. No, he didn't sign. No,
we should do it in different languages each time. We should do it.
It's funny. Yeah, I saw when Anthony asked the question earlier. I was about to go in the chat and be like, me no habla inglés. But,
well, let me introduce this, because we barely touched on this aspect of it. If he signs the 8.7, does he get the no trade clause? Does he?
He has a no trade clause. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But if he signs a new deal, is there a potential there?
Like he could negotiate one. Like he could negotiate a deal where is no trade, or he can also negotiate a deal where I forget the exact wording at this time, but it's on the tip of my tongue, to where he has a trade clause. Like for instance, where okay, if you guys pay me, then whenever I go where I go, they got to give me additional money. Like, for instance, let's say if I want that 25 and the Sixers say, we're only willing to give you 20. Well, okay, let me get my trade clause to where if I get traded, then I get that 25. Right. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Or it could also work in the other way, I think, where if another team offers him a contract and the Sixers match it, could the Sixers instead of sign him, then trade him with that new contract?
And I think they could. Yeah, I mean,
we understand you want to.
Are you talking about a sign and trade, or are you talking about trade it later? I mean, they could probably do a sign and trade, but I think this is what happens. So if another team gives them, if he signs a tender from another team, then the Sixers have to match exactly what that is. Like whatever they said they were going to give him, well, the Sixers have to do the exact same thing. So, I mean, I don't think you can make variations to it now, but if they want to do a sign and trade, now here's the thing, like they could do a sign and trade with someone, Like what he could do is he could negotiate with another team, and then they could say, hey, look, I know y'all not willing to give him this type of money right now or what have you, but what we could do is look on my roster, see who you want, right? And what happens is this is what we're willing to give him. Now the Sixers could in turn say, okay, well, we'll match that. We'll sign him, and then we'll immediately trade him. So then that comes on their books.
Right.
And then the Sixers could, in turn get someone else. So I wouldn't wait for another team to make him an offer. Like,
I agree.
You know what I mean? And give him so he'll sign something, because then you'll get screwed.
Yeah. I agree with that. All right. So no, he hasn't signed, and no to the trade clause. Also, Shake Milton heading to Serbia, Keith. Yeah. He's signing on with, hold on, I have the name of the team. Partizan Belgrade. Serbia.
Okay. Good luck.
Best of luck, Shake. Best of luck, Shake.
Nah, the funny thing about, and that's crazy. Remember, like, Shake Milton, think about this. Not only that. So you remember when a couple years ago, at first, so Shake Milton had that game against the Clippers where he was just torching them, and everybody loved him. And it was a product of him, like, taking advantage of the opportunities that were afforded to him, right? And then I believe it was Doc Rivers' first year or second year, whatever, but that's when they had Joel Embiid was injured. They had other injuries, and they inserted Shake Milton into the starting lineup, and he was balling. I mean, Shake was the guy. And then, you're like, they say, okay, the playoffs are going to come. We're going to depend on Shake. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it was nothing. Like, it was crazy. It was like, no, nothing. And, Shake is a guy who can play, but it's also one of those things where he needs to find a place where he's going to be in the right situation for him, because he was undrafted, he was a two-way guy. It's one of those things where they look at him and it's like, well, he could go missing for a couple games. Like, he could become the forgotten guy. So he can play, but he just needs someone that's going to have faith in him. And it's crazy because I believe when he torched the Clippers the way he did, Doc Rivers was the Clippers coach at that particular time, right? And then when he came back, and I'm telling you, that stretch, it was a phenomenal stretch. And then Doc is like, we're going to keep Shake in the rotation. We're going to do this. And my man was just racking up DNPs and didn't play. So it was just, that was a little mind-boggling at that particular time.
Head-scratching, certainly. Head-scratching, to say the least, with Doc Rivers. What do we got here? Lou, not liking Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey, complete fraud. It's not going to get better till he's gone. Well, that might happen at the end of this year. Jason A. earlier just saying what's up to you and I. What's up, Jason A? Driving and delivering. Hello. If it's similar money, might as well play in Europe over the Sixers. Philly is almost guaranteed bad vibes on the team. Well, you could say that if it wasn't for Gershon Yabusele going out there and balling out, playing well in the EuroLeague, playing great in the Olympics, getting the opportunity with the Sixers, and then cashing in a little bit more there with the New York Knicks. So, hey, I know bad vibes to Shake Milton. I'm just saying that's where he's going to be. If anybody's looking for him, that's where he's be. That's where he's at.
It's just, I know somebody
was looking for Ben Simmons earlier. He still isn't signed either.
Yeah, I saw it, my man. But here's the thing. Nothing against playing in Europe, but it's kind of sort of like, the NBA is regarded as the best league in the world. And I'm pretty sure if Shake had an opportunity, he would love to stay in America, then have to worry about maybe getting a translator, being so far away from family and friends. And like when we talk about similar money, you got to just make sure that you're in the right situation, because guys have gone overseas and told me that, yo, man, they act like they didn't want to pay me. Like, if they feel like you're not living, you never heard those stories about?
I haven't heard the stories of that. I've heard the opposite. But wow,
no. Okay. So you go overseas, and you're like, and especially like, so Shake is going to be an ex-NBA player. So you're going to go over there and like you're packing them in. Like they're coming to see you. And like if you don't score like the amount of points that they think you should pay, they're withholding checks, dude. Like they're basically withholding. Oh yeah, it happens all the time. And then sometimes you go over there and you sign with a team, the team goes bankrupt, and then all of a sudden no one's getting paid. So when you go overseas, you got to make sure you're with the right situation. Now, again, there are certain teams that you know that are really reputable and stuff like that. But yeah, dude, those Americans, like if you go over there and you don't like produce the way they felt like, and they're like, nah, and then they'll get rid of you too. They won't pay you and they'll get rid of you. And then you got to also know a lot of times they don't play as many NBA games, but they practice. Some teams practice twice a day. They do 2-a-days in the regular season, like 3-hour practices, 2-a-days. Like, so you practice in 6 days. So you got to be careful when you go overseas. And like, I get it. Everybody says it's equal money, but just make sure you're going to get that check though. You're going to get that pay deposited in your check.
America. All right. Anyway, I know what I've heard.
Always green.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I've heard mostly from like college athletes that want to get drafted to the NBA, don't catch on anywhere. They love going over to Europe. I've heard it from that angle where it's like they're getting the opportunity. But I guess that's more along the lines of they haven't even gotten an NBA career started yet. Like Shake Milton obviously had an NBA career started. So the college guys are like, wait, I still get to play? All right, let's party. I don't have to get.
You just got to make sure, man. You got to just make sure you find the right situation. Like I remember once, and everyone thinks just because you go overseas and you see a guy come back with a Louis Vuitton backpack, that doesn't mean that he was making a lot of money. Like I remember one year, where was I? It was one year we were in summer league. It was like the what was it? It was not the Utah Jazz. It was like the Vegas Summer League.
Okay.
And a friend of mine is an executive for one team, and there was an executive from Japan who wanted to, like, we all went out to lunch together. So we were talking, and he was asking me, hey, what do you think about this kid and that kid? Yada yada. And it was a guy who was from Philly. And I was like, oh yeah, he'll be great for you. He'll be great for you. And the dude was like, yeah, we think he's worth $60,000 a year. And I'm like, huh? Like, because I was thinking like at least he was going to make 200. So in other words, what I'm just trying to tell you is like, you got to make sure you go to the right situation, because there are a lot of different professional leagues. You know what I mean? A lot of different ones. Now we all think of, the Spanish teams in the Euro League. We think of China. Now China, you go get paid, right? But there are certain leagues that guys go to, and they got everybody saying like, yeah, I'm playing overseas. And then you go over there and it's like, man, I could have done better with a 9-to-5, with my college degree in some instances. Right. So, you just got to be careful. That's all. You just have to be careful.
Gotcha. Well, good thing, Keith. My playing days are well over. I don't think I'm getting an offer from Serbia. I'm just saying is all. No, but seriously, in all seriousness, good luck to Shake Milton. Love to see him back in the NBA soon. Go ahead, reestablish yourself. Get back over here, my man. His name is Keith Pompey. My name is Marc Farzetta. This is a little program we like to call Locked On 76ers. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to Locked On 76ers. Also, all things Locked On Sports across the nation. Hopefully, I'll be back with you guys later today following the Phillies game. Weather is questionable down there in South Philadelphia today, really throughout the Delaware Valley. So hopefully I'll catch you on Locked On Phillies postcast after the Phillies hopefully sweep the Mariners today. Keith Pompey, Marc Farzetta, like and subscribe to Locked On 76ers. Back with you guys tomorrow. Look forward to it. See you guys then.